What it do, what it do. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I had some very different ideas about today's rant. But as my grandmother used to tell me, God laughs at your plans. I was going to talk about the original mimetic warfare. I was also going to talk about the importance of what it is America actually represents. Not the current state of the United States and its foreign policy debacles, or the shit that they're getting the rest of us into right now, but why the foundation of America is so important to the concept of freedom, not just in the West, but globally, and how little the general public understand what it is that the Jeffersons and Washingtons of the world achieved way back when. But things are accelerating drastically. China's moving on the ocean. Russia's taking a hit. Things are heating up, internally and externally, all around the battlefront. Israel have launched missiles at Syria. The conflict is widening. China's moving on Taiwan. There's 3 theaters of war, all connected. This isn't 3 simultaneous fronts, 3 simultaneous wars. This is 3 simultaneous fronts. World War III is here, people. And time is short. On top of that, even the mainstream media is starting to latch onto the depopulation narrative. Speakers at the World Economic Forum are talking openly about reducing the Earth's population back to what it was 500 years ago. That's less than 1 billion people. You do the math. That's a lot of murder to get us down to those kind of numbers. It's happening now. I mean, to keep the friction low, I'm sure they were hoping that the vast majority of us would be consumed in a global conflict, and then there'd be fewer questions to answer. But modern warfare is just not like that. It's hard to eliminate civilian populations along the way. You can scatter them to the winds, you can force a mass migration. But the slash and burn operations of the 19th century are just not viable in the current way of war. So what does that leave? Well, there's plenty of options. I think one of the chief weapons in this war, and I'm not talking about the conflict between the East and the West, I'm talking about the invisible class warfare that's going on right now. Now, I've always sort of, on paper, been in the middle class, although my work history would kind of put me more in the working class. Class almost doesn't mean what it used to at the moment, because what you have is the lower middle class and the working class being indoctrinated by the upper middle class and the elite into thinking that all these causes are in the name of the poor and the oppressed, when in fact a lot of these people have become useful idiots in service of the elite and will be the means by which a neo-feudalism is installed, a digital neo-feudalism. Where the further you are from the center of control, the less meaning your life will have and the less freedom you'll be granted. The war will give them a lot of excuses to enact control measures. Surveillance, yes, but rationing, acquisition of land and property for the war effort, And that's just for starters. It's come out this week that the United States is still carrying on its gain of function research in Wuhan. What the fuck is that all about? Many experts have said if this shit continues, that will be the reason the human race ceases to exist. And I don't doubt them. The hubris of the elite class is staggering. Absolutely staggering. They're not even that much smarter than us. I'd say they're a few IQ points higher on average, but not really. Not to the level they imagine themselves. What they have is the edge, the advantage, which they maintain not through their own excellence, but by keeping us down, by destroying innovation, by regulating out of existence challenges to their monopoly. I don't know what to tell you, other than to be, at this point, hyper vigilant. The threats come from without and within. Due to the nature of modern warfare, fifth generational warfare as it's known, cognitive warfare as it's been recently remonikered, there are enemies everywhere. The last 2 years didn't teach you that Morpheus's opening speech to Neo in the Matrix is pretty much where we're at. Those who are not ready to awaken to the truth may be your chief enemy. The narrative lines they've been fed, once again referring, as many online commentators have, to the Queensland Police spokeswoman. They're fostering a Maoist type snitch on your family members scenario. They push narratives about hoarders and preppers and white supremacy, and all kinds of other nonsense. Man versus woman is a big one. What a psyop that is. Convincing every woman in every nation that her closest ally, the man in her home, is her chief enemy in her life. You take it back to the proper perspective of class warfare. Talk about divide and conquer. Those of you who are familiar with Alinsky and his tactics, or as the Peter Boghossian and James Lindsay crowd would put it, grievances. Grievance groups. This is why, in principle, I'm actually against an Indigenous voice in Parliament. As I talked about in my last video, the concept of equality before the law is supremely important. That said, I will be standing with my Indigenous brothers and sisters in this country and around the world on January 6th. For a worldwide sovereign tribal people's protest in the name of ending this madness and returning the earth somewhat to a less exploited habitat. They're looking after it. I don't buy into the modern banker-driven climate change narrative, but I do believe that the ecology needs management and protection. We need clean air, we need clean water, we need good soil. Now, I don't necessarily buy into the rules and regulations. I don't believe in the Australian chauvinism for native species. I believe humans are an invasive species, and that's all of us. Even the indigenous people did not originate on this land, and we've brought with us those things that we need to survive, which actually mean we make less of an impact on the wider environment if we can get what we need where we live. That's all up for debate. That specifics of all of that, that's not so important. That's not what I'm trying to get at today. I'm just basically saying things are heating up on many, many fronts. Getting information is getting more and more difficult. Due to the kind of research I have been doing, less and less as a hobby these days, more and more as I see it, navigating my own survival and the survival of my family in this ever-changing system is getting more and more difficult. Cost of living has exploded, as I'm sure none of you need to be reminded. And why is that? Aside from the climate change and the associated taxes, we're living under two other major psyops that are chewing through the working class people's tax contributions, to put it euphemistically. It's completely unsustainable. As Conor McGregor was saying in the interview I was just watching again, the West is, well, NATO, is using $3 million missiles against $30,000 drones. You don't have to be a math whiz to see that's unsustainable. What to do? What to do? If you're at all familiar with the policy outlines put forward by the World Economic Forum, the time frame is 2030. You'll own nothing, and you'll be happy. The own nothing part I could see. The happy implies, to my mind, a change in the paradigm of what psychological warfare is, far greater than what we've seen over the last 2 years. All the pieces of the puzzle are there. It's not that hard to put them together. You just got to watch the recruiting ads and read the press releases from the relevant people. Still saying hypervigilant for 11 years will burn anybody out. So pace yourselves. Inform yourselves. Things are leaking into the mainstream now, so if you've had any doubts, try and track them down. But be very aware that I think they'll even start talking about it in terms of sixth generation warfare pretty soon. It's the massive involvement of AI. We've already seen chatbot AI, Stable Diffusion. I don't think people quite comprehend how powerful these tools are. I was talking to a friend of mine over New Year's who uses one of the chatbots at work to help him write C++ programs. And I won't name names or even where he works, but I'll just say that he works in a critical part of the European energy infrastructure. And he's already relying on this technology to help him write programs that operate significant infrastructure. I've seen what it can do in terms of generating news articles, book reviews, original content with very little prompting. Similarly with Stable Diffusion and some of the other AI art projects. And I'm very anti AI art, being an artist myself. But then again, I realize that this is probably the way people felt about Photoshop when it emerged on the scene. Eventually, it'll sort of settle down to the point where an artist will be the best person to get the best art from something like Stable Diffusion. But already, even though it's fairly amateurish and it's easy for someone like myself to spot, this technology is already being used to create false histories. The most obvious example I've come across being a series of photographs of of the Antarctic's visit to the South Pole, completely taking in many people in the conspiracy movement. In some of the less serious corners of the market, I gotta say, people I watch for entertainment rather than information, but they were taken in. They were taken in. Thankfully, there are still some pretty obvious signs if you know what to look for. Stable Diffusion seems to have a problem with perspective, particularly with humans being placed in landscape. The symmetry of faces, there's some subtle tells, but they will disappear as the technology evolves. So yeah, I wonder how much wagging of the dog we're going to see before this is all done. I expect it will be quite a lot, given that every time the civilians interact with these machines, they get better at lying. I've been thinking for a long time that a lot of these free-to-use services, your Mondays, your Grammarlies, hell, even Telegram or just your text messaging, if the data's all fed into the database, it's just giving the machine a better understanding of our subtleties so that they can be more adequately mimicked. So it's going to get very hard to trust your ears and your eyes in the near future. So spend some time with this stuff and study the output. It could save your life at some point, stop you from doing something stupid based on false information. I don't know how serious things are going to get. But I'm really feeling the pressure starting to rise. My spider senses are telling me time has never been shorter. So stay vigilant, folks. Peace, love, and kung fu. Black Eye out.